Coming up on this week's episode of the Rip City Roundtable podcast, I am at a table for one tonight. I've had some great guests on, both Blazers Edge staff, friends of mine, people affiliated with the G League. And so I think it's been a good point in our podcasting life here on the Rip City Roundtable. Just kind of reflect and look at where we've been. We started doing this podcast during the season. Games are going on, things to cover. Obviously, it wasn't a great season so far, but it ended, and now we're moving on to the off season. And so I have a few points. I am not, the Nostradamus of the Blazers or Rip City or all the things. But I have a few points, some things I'd like to discuss that I'm going to bring up with you. And so sit back, grab a drink, grab some chips, whatever you're doing, and join me, and we will dive in to some Blazers basketball here on the Rip City Roundtable podcast. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right, we are back from that quick break, and you're here with me. You might think, oh, this is the best guest of all time because you're just talking to Corey here. Or you're like, oh my gosh, he doesn't have a guest. That's the worst thing ever. I promise this will be painless. Maybe you'll enjoy it. So I think it'll be good. But I want to dive in. I think there's two big topics here that are kind of going on. We're waiting until May 12th as Blazers fans here, Rip City Nation, Hand Fruit Nation, all the things. As we see where the Blazers are going to land in this draft order, right? And although it sucks because we want to be in the playoffs, we want to be pursuing a championship, having exciting moments in games, waving the OKC Thunder off the Moda Center court, things like that, things that we miss. We want to be doing that. But honestly, I would rather be where we're at right now than, say, the Phoenix Suns, who just got swept by the Minnesota Timberwolves 4-0 in a series that everyone thought Phoenix would probably play a little bit better than they did, and just didn't perform. They looked like to be a good matchup against Minnesota. Turned out to be a terrible matchup against Minnesota. And Anthony Edwards just said, it's my time, and I'm going to carry this squad. And to see a team like Phoenix, who literally has no draft picks, outside of, I think they have one this season, and then nothing after that. So that's a little rough for them. And they have, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal. Obviously, I think everyone would say they love Devin Booker. But if we look at Durant and Beal, specifically Beal, is a terrible contract. And Kevin Durant, although still KD in some ways, but can an all-star level player, all-world player get swept in the first round? Like, I don't know. The Lakers, they got decimated by the Nuggets, although some of those games are pretty close. But at least LeBron gets one game off of them, right? The gentleman's sweep. He didn't get swept. So I don't know if I'd feel good about having KD moving forward. But if you look at Phoenix, who would we rather be? Would we rather be the Blazers right now, who are looking to May 12th as a hopeful date that a ping pong ball drops? I know it's not the best draft class, but let's still get the best draft pick that we can. We could leverage that for a trade. We could still draft a player. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know how things are going to turn out. People say this draft is terrible. Maybe that's not going to be the case. Maybe it turns out to actually be a good draft. Maybe there's Giannis Antetokounmpo in waiting. Maybe there's Jokic in the second round. Manu Ginobili. I don't know, these players that were not highlighted as franchise changing players, they're sitting there too. So maybe they're there. And I think we have to be okay with trying to get the best draft pick we can in order to leverage that. And then again, maybe we don't like the player that we would draft. Maybe it can be packaged for something else. So I would rather be in this position waiting to see what draft pick we get as a higher pick, then just got swept in the first round by the Timberwolves, right? If not be the Suns. Now, could you say, would we want to be the Pelicans? Well, you got my attention a little bit more, but is Zion ever going to be healthy? Does Trey Murphy evolve into somebody later? Herb Jones, like some of their young pieces, Brandon Ingram, I think we know who he is. And then, our boy CJ. I think the Pelicans have some things to look forward to, but that it'll be the big health question forever, just like it always was with the Blazers, even from a long time ago. Can Odin stay healthy? Can Brandon stay healthy? Right? Can we not get an injury to Wes Matthews and these different players, even going way back with Walton and like these teams that always just got held back because of injuries. Now you got the Pelicans. So would we rather be the Pelicans or would we be the Blazers? Give me the Blazers. I think we have more hope. I know the Pelicans are young, but give me our squad. I'd rather be in a position to have a better draft pick than have just feeling terrible. We just got swept out of the first round. Would we rather be the Lakers? Okay, maybe I'll be the Lakers just because the the franchise itself can always pull free agents. I hate the Lakers, and I would never want to wear the green or the purple and gold. But they have Anthony Davis, they have LeBron, they have pieces that they could move, start over, or they could build around them. So I don't want to get in the nitty gritty of this stuff, but I just think as the Blazers look right now, as we're watching these playoffs, and we're sad that we're not in it, it is kind of a way to say, well, I'd rather be in our position than be swept or to be the Miami Heat that are about to lose to the Celtics and in that position. So I like where we're at. We're always in this spot. I as Blazers fans, I as a Blazer fan, I want to move past this, be hopeful for the lottery, be hopeful for draft night. And that's what I look forward to. I don't like that, but that's where we're at. So we just have to accept it. And I think I'd rather be in our position than those other teams that I mentioned. I think it's curious. And I don't know about everybody listening, but I do this. And I go through the teams and I'm like, how many past Blazers are in the playoffs? Right. And, you don't have to go back like crazy far or that player never saw any playing time, but I do think it's fascinating where you go team by team and it always feels like to me there's a ton of ex Blazers all the time, always playing. And you go the Pelicans, you got CJ and Larry Nance, right, that are contributing to those teams or to that team. You go to the Clippers, you got Norman Powell, who wasn't with us very long, but Powell had ability and skill, was an NBA champion with Toronto. And it's like, well, he's on the Clippers, doing his thing there. You get to Phoenix, of course, Nurk, who the debate, even on BlazersEdge.com, is it Nurk or Aiton? Who would you rather have right now, right? The back and forth. Nurkic was on that team. So that's always something, that you look at and say, there's another Blazer, right? Um, you're going down the list. Of course, do we need to say Milwaukee, right? I mean, we know who's on the Bucks right now that's not on the Blazers any longer. And so, it is fascinating. I do think there's always players that were on the team that weren't just like, oh, a Blazer for a second or didn't get playing time, but actually saw some playing time. I might be forgetting some too, and maybe some will come to mind here in a second if I am forgetting any. But those are, I always look to that and I'm like, man, if we just had that player back, right? If you had Josh Hart back, right? Playing for the Knicks right now. It's like he was on our team. Like people forget, like, oh, we had Josh Hart, you know. So you can play the game all these different ways, and they're all different situations. So we don't do this game in a vacuum, but it's like, man, you take all these old pieces of players that we had and put them back on the team. Could you construct a championship level team? Obviously, still centered around Lillard because he would be the best player that used to be on our team that's no longer on our team. But we had the ability to kind of fit these guys around him, and we didn't get it done. So, who am I to cry about it? But it is fascinating. I always do that every year, and it always feels like to me there's a ton of ex Blazers always in the playoffs on other teams. I don't think Charlotte can say that. I don't think San Antonio can say that. I don't think the Washington Wizards can say that. The Pistons can't say that. But I think the Blazers is every year. This always seems to happen. So I don't know. Disagree with me if you want. And again, I'm probably leaving out some obvious players here. Mason Plum is Mason Plum in the playoffs? I don't think Mason Plum is in the playoffs, but he might be. But anyway, so I always find that fascinating, and it's like we got to get back, but I want to be in the playoffs with a chance to win. I never mind. Hey, we got in as the sixth seed. Let's see if we make some noise. We used to have some good playoff memories, even if we weren't getting wins or had contenders. But with this iteration of our team we have now that's young, I'm talking about our current Blazers team. I want to see us take this time to reset and regroup so we can make a deep run. So that's where I'm at here, and we don't know how long that's going to take, but I do find it fascinating as well. Kind of as another point that I wanted to hit is we get into okay, we got to who's lead the ship, who leads the ship, right? Well, we look at Cronin. Joe Joe is laid out the map. It all started last summer, really for us with the Dame trade. It mapped out what our course of action was going to be. Now there's a lot of factors that are out of his control that have to play out. Did he foresee Shaden Simons being hurt a lot of the season, and Brogdon and Williams and Thibault and all these ins and outs, Grant, all these guys, that started getting hurt with quotations or actually hurt? He couldn't see that, right? But is the pathway there to develop and draft the players that we need to draft and develop the players we need to develop? Scoot Henderson, is he take another leap or not? But he's at the helm, and I find it fascinating. He got 2 second place votes in executive of the year. Now that placed him, I'm going to spitball this and say 10th, maybe somewhere on there. I'm not counting here. So he wasn't close to winning. He ended up with 6 overall points. Brad Smith had 101, just to give you perspective. And he was the guy that was voted as executive of the year. But I do find it interesting that he got 2 votes. And maybe those are buddies. Maybe those are friends. Could have been the Bucks. Maybe they voted for Joe. Probably not the Heat, but maybe the Bucks did. Saying, "Hey, thanks for Dame here." Although the way the playoffs have started out for Dame and for Giannis and the Bucks, maybe haven't been maybe they're not thanking us quite yet. Um, but he got 2 votes, so I don't know, that says something. I think he handled the Dame situation decently. I think that was maybe the best he could have done. Obviously, you always can do better in those situations, but hey, our guy, 2 votes for executive of the year, or 2 second place votes, sorry. I don't think Chauncey got any coaches votes. I don't know if they've come out with that award, or yeah, they did, but I don't know if Chauncey was on that list with any votes there. But it's on Cronin here to be what is the next step. And I know last season or last off season, excuse me, people might say that was the defining moment, right? How do we trade Dame? Where do we trade him? What do we get in return? But I think it always was going to be the next off season that was the one that mattered, right? Last off season, it felt very scripted. It felt Dame is getting traded. We're drafting Scoot. Now let's see what happens. Like, there wasn't a ton of other pivots. Yes, what were we going to get for Dame, and could they be flipped and things like that? Hey, does it count that Drew Holiday is in the playoffs? He technically was a Blazer for 2 seconds, and he's on the Celtics. That was another player that I had left out there. So I don't know if that I don't know if that one counts or not, but Drew Holiday as well. So again, more Blazers that are in the playoffs that are in the playoffs that played on the Blazers. So anyway, that's just a little thing in there. But you know, he didn't know who was going to be drafted, but last offseason it was scripted. And I felt like this offseason, it's all over the place. Right? I mean, it is so many options laid out in front of Cronin right now that this is the one that will matter, in my opinion, the most, because you're gonna have to see what these are the hard decisions. Last offseason, that was a tough decision. This one is the hard decision. And where do we go? What veterans do we trade? How do we uh you know create more space in the log jam that is our guards between Simons and Sharp? Scoot and Brogdon. Like, what do you do? We can't have them all. That didn't work this season. There was injuries, so that kind of was the bailout. But ultimately, that doesn't pay off in the long run for the development we need to get through, and we have to pick a path. And now this offseason is the offseason to make that path. Because honestly, this one dictates a direction to probably more losing. But if we can't pick a right losing path this offseason, or I'm sorry, this offseason that leads it to the next season to potentially for another high draft pick, then that's just 2 seasons thrown away, and it's so frustrating. And we can't just say injuries. Oh, it's injuries. It's injuries. No, it's beyond injuries. And so this is the big one for Joe. 2 second place executive of the year votes. Not great, but it's something. Can Joe now pull the right strings? Because if he does, and if the right moves are made, and let's say there's not even massive progress in the wins and loss column. Let's throw that out for a second. Oh wait, never mind. He didn't make the playoffs. I had another Blazer in my mind, but he didn't make the playoffs, so I'm not even going to say it out loud. Um, will those moves pay off? Right? Will we see development? So again, our win loss record is bad, but do we start to see a lot of chemistry forming between Shaden and Scoot, or more development and chemistry between Scoot and Aiton, which we started to see a lot? Does Tumani and Jabari like start to really wreak havoc through the NBA, and how they play? I mean, I don't know these things. We got to see that. So again, even if we're losing, or what do we get for Brogdon? What do we get for Grant? If we're flipping them, does Robert Williams even give us any trade value? Can he stay healthy? Like all these questions. But this will be up to Cronin which way we go. And I feel like he's earned enough trust with us. I feel like maybe not with you, but with me, I feel like he gets it, and there's calm there and a good demeanor, and he's smart. He listens to his players somewhat. So I think I trust him to make a call here. We were with Neil Olshey for a long time, and I think we trusted him in the beginning too. And we saw where that went. But let's see how this goes. But this is a big offseason. So Cronin, 2 second place votes. Come on, baby. Next offseason, why don't we get like into top 5 executive of the year? If we get him into the top 5 of executive of the year, maybe that was the offseason and the season that we really needed. So but anyway, that was kind of my take. The playoffs have been interesting. We've had some really good games. I think the Knicks and the 76ers have all been really exciting. Couple overtimes in there. I think the Cavs and Magic has been pretty predictable. I love that the Heat stole a game against the Celtics, and then those haven't been games since then. I think you see a team like the Thunder, who people might say that's the blueprint for the Blazers, although I don't think we have a Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on the team right now. Maybe we will, but I don't think we have him right now. But that's a young team that definitely has taken jumps over the last 2 or 3 seasons, and now is the number one seed and swept the Pelicans, which is good. I think the Clippers and Mavericks has been interesting, although Kawhi hasn't played. Seeing the emergence of Anthony Edwards against the Suns, dismantling the Suns. I think the Nuggets, sending the Lakers home, which always makes me happy. But I think the Timberwolves Nuggets series is going to be interesting. So I think there's been good matchups. And then, of course, the weirdest one of all of them has been this Milwaukee Indiana series where they haven't seen Giannis. Lillard carried that Bucks team and then got hurt. The Pacers, who probably should have just run away with this series already, have not yet. And man, they blew the game of all games in game 5, where Milwaukee was brought out, nobody, no Giannis and no Dame, but Middleton showed up. Bobby Portis showed up. Patrick Beverly, 12 assists. Like this kind of patched together Milwaukee team gets a win. And now the Pacers may have to deal with Giannis and Dame now, which who knows how healthy either of those guys are. But now this is what the Pacers have created, is a monster, and now with their superstar players back, we'll see how that goes. So it's been entertaining. It's been fun. I've been keeping up with it. Obviously, it's sad when Portland's not in, but I think there's been some good nuggets and takeaways from this finals. But we all know 11 days until the lottery, what draft pick are the Blazers going to have? And then that's when it gets real, guys, because then we got like a month before the NBA draft, month and a half, where we can sit, debate who should we take? This person, that person. It's going to get a lot of fun. So thank you. I appreciate y'all hanging in here with me as we kind of take a breath. I love doing the podcast. We got some more exciting episodes coming up. We got other podcasters coming on. We'll have other Blazers Edge writers, maybe some old, maybe people affiliated with the team. Not going to say anything more than that, but we got some of them lined up. So we got some fun stuff this summer. And then as we lead up to the season, which is still a long, 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 long ways away, but we have some good content. So anyway, thank y'all for listening to the Rip City Roundtable podcast. Table for one, just me eating all by myself at the round table, but it's okay. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back next week with a great guest. And as always, it is a great day to be a Blazer.